The papers arrived on a Thursday afternoon, handed to me by a process server in a crisp gray suit, who offered a tight smile and said, "Just doing my job." I opened the envelope and read the words, "Defamation damages, emotional distress, and slander." The irony so thick, I nearly laughed. Karen was suing me for exposing the truth. I sat at the kitchen table, Sophie drawing at the counter beside me, and read every word of the complaint twice, once as a father and once as a man who had nothing left to fear. She was trying to silence me, to scare me back into the shadows where she controlled the narrative. But she had forgotten something crucial. I had already lost everything she could take. And that made me dangerous. I contacted a friend from college, now A.E. lawyer specializing in civil litigation. He read the complaint and chuckled, said, "This won't hold up in court, not with the paper trail, not with the emails, not with the money funneling, not with the dog, especially not with the dog he offered to represent." Me pro bono I accepted. And then I got to work first. I made a call to the local animal advocacy group, told them the story, sent them Sophie's drawing, sent them the photos of Daisy, her vest, her certificates, her smiling beside my daughter, on her best days. The organization posted it on their socials with a call to action. The post went viral in less than 24 hours. Thousands of comments, hundreds of shares. Local news picked it up again, this time with Sophie's permission. Her voice clear. As she told the anchor, Daisy was her best friend, and she didn't understand why someone would let people hurt her on purpose. That clip broke hearts and lit fires. People rallied. A protest formed outside the HOA building. People holding signs with Daisy's name, with pictures of her, with Sophie, with quotes from the bylaws Karen had violated. They chanted, "Justice for Daisy," and "Sophie deserves peace," and "Enough is enough." Karen stayed inside. When she tried to drive out, someone filmed her behind, the wheel windows up as she refused to look at the crowd, her face pale, her mouth tight. The footage hit the internet that night, and the meme storm began. They dubbed her Karen the Dog Destroyer, Queen of HOA, Hell the Meme, Mother of Malice. One viral video showed side-by-side clips of her smiling at past HOA meetings, followed by her storming out of the boardroom, red-faced and silent. Then came the public meeting. It was mandatory, a city hearing on zoning violations and public trust. I arrived. Early brought Sophie with me. She held my hand tightly, but her chin was lifted, her eyes steady. The room filled fast. Reporters, residents, activists, city officials, even a few people who had stayed quiet before, now sat in the front row. Karen entered, last flanked by her lawyer, dressed in a sharp navy blazer, her eyes scanning the crowd like a queen entering enemy territory. The hearing began with the chair reading off the list of infractions, from illegal structures to financial mismanagement to breach of fiduciary duty. Karen's lawyer objected to nearly everything. The chair overruled, each time citing evidence, documentation, video proof. Then they opened the floor. I stood, walked to the podium, and took a breath. I spoke of Sophie, of Daisy, of the night the gunshot split the trees, and my little girl screamed for her best friend, of the weeks of silence, of the grief so heavy it nearly crushed us. I spoke of the patterns, the punishments, the manipulation, the fear I said Karen had created, a system that protected her while hurting everyone else, and I wasn't the first to suffer under it, just the last. When I finished, Sophie stood beside me. She didn't say much, just, she was my dog, and she helped me feel brave. The room went silent. The chair nodded, thanked her, then called the next speaker. By the end of the hearing, 3 more residents had spoken against Karen, all with stories, all with proof. The board held a vote right there in public. The results unanimous. Karen was removed from the HOA effective immediately. The crowd erupted in applause, but that wasn't all. The city issued her fines for code violations, thousands in penalties. Her cousin's business was flagged for investigation, and the HOA accounts were frozen pending a full audit. Karen tried to leave without speaking, but the cameras were waiting and the reporters didn't move. She tried to cover her face with a scarf, but someone shouted, "Tell the little girl why you let them kill her dog." She froze, turned, then whispered something that no mic caught, but the look on her face said everything. She had lost, and she knew it. 3 weeks later, the lawsuit was dropped quietly. No apology, no admission, just a quiet retreat into obscurity. Karen sold her house that month. No goodbye, no announcement, just a moving truck one morning and silence by nightfall. Her reign was over and peace returned. Sophie laughed again in the yard, not loud but real. She chased a new puppy named Echo, a rescue with ears too big and eyes full of mischief. She whispered to her, sometimes said Daisy sent her to keep her safe. I believe it. The neighborhood changed too. Fences came down literally and figuratively. People talked more, smiled more, no longer afraid of fines or whispered threats. The HOA elected new leadership people who cared about community, not control. And me, I sat on the porch. One evening, watched Sophie run barefoot through the grass, Echo close behind the sky, gold and wide above them. And I thought about how close we came to breaking, how grief nearly drowned us, and how truth pulled us back. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a little girl smiling again because someone stood up. Sometimes it's a meme. Sometimes it's a quiet victory. And sometimes it's the sound of laughter where there used to be silence. Sometimes in life we come across such people who will never care for anyone except them. Today I am also going to tell you a story that I came across in my community. So grab your snacks and enjoy the tea. But before that, please subscribe my channel so you'll never going to miss the HOA drama. It was 5:30 in the morning when I woke up to the sound of my faucet coughing air instead of water. The metallic gurgling echoed through my empty kitchen like a death rattle. I froze, with my coffee mug in hand, blinking at the tap, as if my glare could will it back to life. Then I heard it again. That hiss, that screech, like the sound of something being drained. I rushed out the back door into the chilled dawn air. My bare feet slapped against the concrete as I ran toward the water tank hidden behind my shed. The smell of rust and wet earth hit my nose before I even turned the corner. And there it was. My water tank, 2,000 gallons of emergency supply, draining like a slit throat. A single green hose ran from the outlet valve, slithering through a hole in the fence, vanishing into my neighbor's yard. My heart punched against my ribs. That was not a standard connection. I had installed this system myself. I knew every valve and every seal. This hose was new, unauthorized, and clearly intentional. Someone had tapped into my private supply. Again, the first time it happened, I thought it was a fluke. Maybe a leaky gasket or some forgotten maintenance. But this was the third time in 2 weeks. And this time, I had caught it in the act. I followed the hose to the fence, peered through a slat, and there she was, Karen standing in her backyard, in a satin robe, watering her garden, like she was queen of the suburb, Shaikwifi. didn't even flinch when I shouted her name, just turned her head slightly. Gave me that smug smile she was famous for. The kind that said rules were for other people. "Oh, hi, Jake," she said. "Didn't think you'd be up this early." I pointed at the hose. "That's my water, Karen." "What do you think you're doing?" She gave a little laugh, like I had just asked the dumbest question on earth. "It's HOA property, Jake. Everything past the main line belongs to the neighborhood. Read your charter. Feet high." Wanted to scream. That tank was installed 5 years ago. At my expense, it was on my land. Fed from my filtration system, I had even maintained it through 3 power outages, all because I believed in being a good neighbor. Now, she was using some twisted interpretation of the HOA guidelines to justify theft. I shut the valve at the source. Water stopped flowing. Karen frowned. "You can't just do that. You're hoarding water while the rest of us pay premiums." My fists clenched. "You're not paying anything, Karen. You're stealing it." She rolled her eyes and walked back inside, letting the hose fall to the ground like it meant nothing. I stood there for a long moment, chest heaving, staring at the muddy puddle where the water had pooled. I had written to the HOA about this. Twice got no reply when I brought it up at the last meeting. Karen had shut me down. She was the board president now. Of course she was. The position nobody wanted, except people like her. People who saw authority as a weapon. That night, I found a new lock for the valve, installed a motion sensor by the tank. I even put up a sign, "Private property, do not tamper." It lasted 3 days. The lock was cut, the sign ripped, the hose was back. And this time, the flow was stronger. She had rerouted the main line from the street, fed her irrigation system directly through my tank. The next HOA meeting was worse. I stood in the community clubhouse, a file in hand, evidence photos, usage logs, video from my trail cam. But Karen was already smiling before I spoke. When I started reading from my notes, she cut me off. "Jake, this isn't about water. It's about cooperation. You installed that tank during your civil engineer days, right? So why not share? Isn't that what good neighbors do?" Laughter. Actual laughter from the room. A few nods, a couple of eye rolls. One neighbor clapped like she was being clever. I stared at the group, wondering if I had stepped into an alternate dimension. Sharing requires consent. "This is theft," I said. But the room had already moved on. Karen closed her binder with a snap. "Motion to table the discussion," she said. Seconded, voted. Done. I left before the meeting ended. My hands were shaking. My mind racing. They had no idea. None of them knew that the tank they were stealing from was more than just my personal supply, that it was wired into the emergency redundancy line, a hidden system, one that I had installed during a drought crisis years ago, at the request of the former HOA. President 1 that kicked in automatically when street pressure dropped. It was designed to feed the entire block in case of a shutdown. And Karen had flipped the switch without even knowing it. She was not just draining my water, she was compromising the safety net of the entire street. And if anything happened, if there was a fire, if the main lines failed, they would all go dry. Every last one of them. Because she wanted to keep her azaleas blooming through the summer. I stared at the hose one last time before coiling it and dumping it on her porch. This was not over. Karen thought she had the upper hand, but she had just declared war, and I do not lose battles. I designed the battlefield for to be continued. The morning after the meeting, I woke to silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that seeps through walls and wraps around your bones. I flicked the tap in the kitchen. No water again. Only this time, there wasn't even a cough. Just dead air. I went, straight to the tank. The motion sensor light blinked red. Triggered at 3:20 in the morning. Someone had been here, and they had come prepared. The new lock was smashed, clean off. The valve was wide open, and my tank was bone dry. This wasn't theft anymore. It was sabotage. Calculated, targeted, and personal. I drove around the neighborhood, saw green lawns soaked from sprinklers, saw Karen's flower beds looking like something out of a botanical garden, and I saw the glint of new piping. Along her fence line, she wasn't just stealing. She had built a whole system to make it permanent. I caught her outside later that afternoon. She was trimming hedges in yoga pants and oversized sunglasses, looking like she was posing for a brochure. "Nice morning for crime, isn't it?" I said. She looked up, didn't even blink. "Still stuck on that whole water paranoia thing, huh? Maybe you need to learn to relax. Jake, let nature share a little. Cut the garbage. You drained the tank. Again. There was a lock on it." She tilted her head. "Maybe you should get a better lock." I stepped forward, close enough that she dropped her shears. "You don't understand what you're doing. That tank feeds the backup line. When the city pipes go dry, that's what keeps water flowing down this street. You mess with that, and people could get hurt." She smiled. Actually smiled. "Then maybe they shouldn't rely on one guy's backyard system, should they?" She turned around, walked back inside, and shut the door in my face. That night, I sat in my garage, staring at the blueprints. Every line, every valve, every backup relay. The system was mine. Designed to run quietly. Invisible until needed. Karen thought she had taken something simple. A free tank. A bonus. For her plants. But what she really stole was control. The HOA didn't care. The neighbors didn't know. The system was hidden by design. Now her tampering had turned it into a ticking bomb. I needed proof. Not just theft, but negligence. Risk something they couldn't ignore. So I started recording, set up cameras with night vision, ran data loggers on the flow rates, even wired a pressure sensor to the main line. 3 days later, the alert came. At 2:15 in the morning, city water pressure dropped. Happened sometimes when maintenance ran tests. The backup tank kicked in just like it should. But this time, the water vanished before it reached the homes. I checked the footage. Karen's system was pulling full capacity, siphoning the emergency line, redirecting it to her personal irrigation setup. The rest of the street got nothing. Not a drop. I watched one sprinkler spin uselessly in the dark, dry as dust. While her garden sparkled like it was being blessed by angels, I sent the footage to the city utilities liaison, marked it as urgent. I sent it to the HOA again. No response. Then I printed stills, blew them up, put them on every mailbox on the block. Water Theft Street, compromise. She's endangering us all. In bold red letters. That afternoon, the street buzzed, neighbors murmuring, kids whispering. People walked by her house, staring, pointing. One guy knocked on my door. Todd from 3 houses down. He looked pale. "Hey, man, I thought it was weird. We lost pressure last week during the fire. Drill. My kid flushed, and nothing came out. I thought it was just bad timing. It wasn't. Karen had taken more than water. She had taken trust, safety. She had broken the system when the HOA finally called a special meeting. It was standing room only. Karen walked in like she owned the place, clipboard in hand, high heels, clicking. I stood up before she could speak, laid the stills on the table, showed the footage, explained the system, the backup valve, the purpose. The design, you could hear the breath. "Leave the room," one woman gasped. Another whispered something about insurance. Karen tried to laugh it off, said I was exaggerating, that nobody appointed me neighborhood savior, that if the tank was so important, why hadn't we been told? I stared her down. You were told. At every meeting, every update, but you didn't listen because you thought you were above the system. And now everyone here knows it. There was silence. Then a vote, unanimous. They ordered an emergency audit, ordered the unauthorized. Piping removed and suspended Karen from her board position. Pending review, she stormed out. No smile this time, no clever lines, just rage as the door slammed shut behind her. Someone in the back clapped, then another, then the whole room. But I knew it. Wasn't over. Not yet. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly, and I wasn't done making sure she never had the chance to do this again. To be continued. The day after the HOA meeting, I walked outside to see Karen's garden glowing under the midday sun. She was out there again, trimming her roses, with a smug look plastered across her face, like she had won, like I was the one who had lost. I stood at my front door, watching her, my fist clenched at my side. She thought it was over, but it wasn't. Not by a long shot. I had a plan, one that would force her to understand exactly what she had done, and make her regret ever thinking she could mess with me. With the whole neighborhood, I started by making a call. The city had a strict policy about water usage. I knew Karen's system had violated several codes, so I got in touch with an inspector. I knew someone I could trust to do the job quietly. I asked for a full inspection of her property. Told him to look for unauthorized modifications. He agreed without hesitation. He knew exactly who Karen was, and didn't like her any more than I did. 2 days later, I got a message from the inspector. He had found everything: the rerouted pipes, the underground tank connection, the entire system that siphoned water from the emergency line to her property. It was illegal. It violated multiple codes, and it was going to cost her a lot with that in hand. I went straight to the HOA office. No appointment, no warning. I walked in with the inspector's report and photos. The secretary's eyes widened when she saw me. I didn't wait for her to ask. I slammed everything down on the counter. Karen's system is illegal. It's draining more than just water. It's compromising the whole neighborhood's emergency supply. And it's time for the HOA to finally step up and do something about it, the secretary stammered. She knew what this meant. Karen had been a thorn in the side of the board for years. Her influence had pushed through countless ridiculous rules, rules that protected her garden, her image, her convenience. But this was different. I wasn't just trying to get a neighbor's. Petty theft acknowledged I was trying to take down the puppet master, the woman who had convinced the whole neighborhood that she was the solution when she was the problem. The secretary made a few calls. The HOA president's voice crackled through. The phone? "Jake, what is this? What's going on?" "I have proof Karen has been siphoning water from the emergency tank. She's breaking city codes and HOA regulations." There was a long pause. Then a frustrated sigh. Bring the evidence to the next meeting. We'll discuss it then. No, this can't wait. You need to act now. Jake, the board, doesn't want to rush into anything. I slammed my fist on the desk. You're rushing into letting a woman steal water from everyone's emergency supply. Is that what you want to tell the neighborhood? The president hesitated. You've made your point, Jake. We'll get an emergency meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. Bring your evidence. We'll handle this. I hung up without another word. I wasn't waiting another minute for her to wiggle out of this one. She had to be stopped. The neighborhood had to be protected. The next day, at the emergency meeting, Karen showed up in her usual immaculate attire, her hair freshly done, her lips bright with defiance. She didn't look worried. She looked like she had everything under control until she saw me and the evidence. I laid out the inspector's report in front of the board. The photos of her illegal modifications, the city codes she had violated, the fines she was facing. It all clicked together in front of them, and the room fell silent. Karen's face twisted. She tried to interrupt, tried to laugh it off, but the board wasn't buying it this time. You can't just accuse me of this. She said, her voice shaking. I'm the one who helped with the water conservation initiative in this neighborhood. I'm the one who always leads the charge for better HOA policies. You're the one who's been lying, I shot back. You've been stealing water from an emergency backup system. A system that could save lives if something happened to the city's pipes. You don't care about conservation. You care about your plants. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Some were clearly uncomfortable. Others looked like they had seen this coming. Finally, one spoke up. We'll need to investigate further, but from what Jake has shown us, this is a serious issue. Karen's shoulders sagged. She was losing control. Her smile faltered. Her voice dropped to a defensive murmur. Please don't do this. I didn't mean for it to get this far, but the damage was done. The HOA president stood up. We will suspend your position immediately. You're being removed from the board. You'll receive a notice from the city's code enforcement about the violations, and we'll be discussing fines at the next meeting. I watched her face drain of color, her smugness gone. Just a pitiful expression left. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out as. The meeting ended. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. I had finally done what no one else in this neighborhood had been willing to do. Exposed Karen for the fraud she truly was. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The battle was won. But the war was still to be fought, to be continued.